Thank you. Welcome all to the launch of Government at a Glance 2025. I'm really grateful that you've made the time to join us to share insights, but also to celebrate the OECD's brilliant work on this really important publication. For those of you who I don't know, my name's Sapna Agrawal, and I'm the Director for the Civil Service Strategy Unit at the UK Cabinet Office. Performance data, improving the way government works is at the core of my work. And so it's a real pleasure to be part of this. Alongside my day-to-day role, I'm also chair of the OECD's Public Governance Committee, which alongside the regulatory policy and senior budget official committees helps to make this publication a reality. So really proud of the committee's work here. Before we get into the meat of this, I'd like to inform everyone that we have French interpretation available for this event, and you can select this option at the bottom of your screen. So given that you're here, I'm sure you know this anyway, but I'll say it again, that Government at a Glance is a critical source of evidence for anyone interested in how governments work. But more importantly, for those of you who are interested in how government can work better. It's released every 2 years and it gathers internationally comparable data and indicators on nearly all aspects of government operations and performance. This data is generated in collaboration with member countries and partner countries. So just to give you a quick sense of the outreach of this publication, it's something that the committee is really proud of. The 2023 edition was downloaded over 190,000 times, making Government at a Glance 2023 the 7th most downloaded OECD report in the period of 23-25. Government at a Glance supports public servants in their daily work by helping them understand their country's position across various public governance domains, identifies opportunities for improvement and benchmarks against more advanced peers. Again, for those of you doing this every day, like me, actually data and comparative data in this area is really poor. And so having a publication like this is really important to us whilst we make changes and also bring our ministers on the journey of why change is possible and important. It's also served as a catalyst for several initiatives aimed at generating more and better evidence on public governance outcomes, including levels of public trust, satisfaction and satisfaction with public services. This new edition presents a narrative on how governments can build trust and deliver prosperity in today's context, marked by a major demographic, environmental and digital shifts compounded as we're all faced by a constrained fiscal space. The focus chapter of this year's edition explores how governments are addressing the climate crisis and working to limit the impacts of climate change. So I have the great pleasure of chairing today's launch, where we'll hear from a distinguished lineup of speakers and panelists. And I would, at this stage, like to extend my very warm welcome to them all. I might just very quickly ask them to introduce themselves. So Matthias, if you could just quickly say hello, and I'll go around the panel.
Yep. Hello, Matthias Cormann, OECD Secretary General.
Brilliant. I will then come to Pase.
Hi, I'm Pasi Vaaramaa. I'm the ambassador of Finland to the OECD.
Brilliant. Next to Angel.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Angel Alonso. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff at the Prime Minister's Office of Spain.
Next to Guillaume.
Hello, my name is Guilherme Melo. I'm Secretary for Economic Policy from Brazil.
And finally to Elsa.
Hello, I'm Elsa Kliszewski. I'm the Director of Public Governance at the OECD.
Brilliant. Thank you all, and thank you for joining us today. It's a real honour to get to discuss this with you. So without further delay, I'd like to invite our OECD Secretary General Cormann to kick us off. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Chair, dear Sapna Agrawal, Ambassador, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends all. A very warm welcome to this launch of the 2025 edition of the OECD's Government at a Glance report. This flagship report provides comparative data on government activities and governance outcomes across 45 OECD member and partner countries. And this 9th edition, which we are launching here today, includes a focus on improving government effectiveness, particularly in the context of long-term structural transformations, making the best possible use of available resources, ensuring responsiveness to citizens' expectations, and of course, all of that importantly in order to foster citizens' trust in public institutions. Indeed, when we look at the OECD Trust Survey, which we released last year, it showed that across 30 OECD countries, 44% of respondents reported having low or no trust in their national government, which exceeded the 39% share of respondents who reported high or moderately high trust. Three of the key priorities highlighted in this report. Firstly, the focus on improving government efficiency and effectiveness to advance policy goals while managing pressures on public finances. Our report shows that spending reviews were ongoing in 34 out of 35 OECD countries participating in our 2023 survey on spending reviews. And these exercises, of course, to be successful, need to be comprehensive and followed up with concrete action to prioritize and pursue spending efficiencies systematically. New digital technologies can help improve the efficiency of government operations, including when it comes to public procurement, which accounts for about 30% of government expenditure on average across OECD member countries. 21 out of 35 OECD countries which participated in the 2024 OECD survey on public procurement use digital technologies to streamline procurement workflows and automate relevant tasks. I mean, there's significant opportunities to go further, for example, on logistics and inventory management, for which only 5 out of 35 OECD countries are at present using digital tools. The second area of focus relates to the opportunity to strengthen meaningful public engagement in decision-making processes and fostering trust in public services. And this includes enhancing stakeholder engagement and oversight on new laws and regulations, for example, with legislators required to consider input from stakeholders, the consultation bodies in their reviews, and that happens in only 14 out of 38 OECD countries at present. Enhancing the accessibility of public services is also key to building citizens' trust and engagement. And here we see that 20 out of the 28 OECD countries, included in our Serving Citizens survey, are now organizing and delivering public services around significant events in people's lives, such as having a child, starting a job, or moving into retirement, rather than around the internal structure or mandates of government agencies, which makes it easier to navigate and makes them more responsive to the needs of citizens when it is structured around life events. The 2024 OECD recommendation on human-centered public administrative services provides guidance on how to implement these innovative approaches and how to continuously improve service design and delivery based on evolving citizens' needs, expectations, and experiences. The third area of focus relates to enhancing access to justice. Justice system transparency, procedural fairness, and legal certainty are all fundamental to our democracies and for ensuring equality of opportunity. Key priorities for improvement here that are highlighted in the report include the need to further strengthen lobbying safeguards to reduce justice system delays and to ensure fair, consistent enforcement of regulations. To support governments in further strengthening their legal systems, the 2023 OECD recommendation on access to justice and people-centered justice systems provides guidance on ensuring the availability, accessibility, and quality of legal and justice-related services. In conclusion, from my end, before we, of course, will hear some more from my colleagues, this report provides the OECD's latest evidence and recommendations to help improve the efficiency of public service delivery and to continue to pursue reforms to government services to address both short and longer term challenges while fostering public trust. And of course, as always, we very much look forward to continue to work with you all to ensure stronger, more responsive and more effective governance for our citizens. And with that, I hand back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthias, and thank you for grounding us in this publication and some of the big opportunities here. And so now for the actual results that we've all been waiting for, I'm going to pass over to Elsa, the Director for Public Governance for the OECD, to present some of the highlights of this year's edition. So Elsa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sapana, and thank you very, very much to our Secretary General for his high-level remarks. Good morning and good afternoon to all. We're absolutely delighted to present some of the key results from this year's edition of Government at a Glance, which we call GAG, which goes in depth into how governments function to deliver best for citizens and also draws the way forward for governments to deliver better for the people. Some of the data that I will present will repeat those that have already been used by the Secretary General with graphs and more country-specific data. The report is structured around three main blocks. First, on trust, satisfaction, and prosperity as key outcomes of effective public governance. Second, on achieving results through good governance practices. And third, on the resources governments use to deliver these outcomes. The focus chapter this year, it's already been said, is on governing for the green transition. So now turning to the results. The Secretary General has already underlined this already. Governments are facing multiple and significant pressures today. The OECD Trust Survey shows that under 4 in 10 people, 39% to be exact, report moderately high or high trust in their national government. This is shown on the left-hand side of the slide. Our analysis of today's evolution of the drivers of trust also shows that strengthening public trust will require, in priority, making efforts to amplify people's voices, use the best available evidence to inform decision-making, balance intergenerational interest, and reinforce the accountability of institutions. These are today the biggest drivers of trust across the OECD. In addition, people are increasingly concerned about the government's role in building prosperity. As shown in the right-hand side of the slide, in a majority of OECD countries, economic issues dominate people's concerns. In 2023, inflation topped the list, followed by poverty and social inequality, as well, and then unemployment and jobs. So aging populations, low productivity, and the need to manage both the digital and green transitions also add further complexities for governments. All of this makes a challenging environment for governments to deliver up to expectations today. In addition, the levers for government action are quite constrained. The fiscal space is tight. The average fiscal deficit in 2023 amounted to 4.6% of GDP, which is significantly higher than the average of 2.9% in the 5 years leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, while public debt in the meantime has reached 112% on average of the GDP, on average across OECD countries. Regulatory tools also face pressures to modernize. Only 41% of people in OECD countries believe it is likely that their government will be able to regulate new technologies, while 35% think of it as unlikely. This highlights the fact that regulatory frameworks are not fully adapted to today's rapid technological changes. However, some room for maneuver still exists, and to a certain extent, we should all work to recreate that room for maneuver. And for that, the space for improvement of government action is by using further digital tools and artificial intelligence. The space for better use of that is big. We will see that throughout the presentation. We are seeing that in most countries, governments are stepping up their efforts to strengthen their capacity to deliver, but there is still a lot of room to grow. Getting back to the digital transition, our evidence shows that while most OECD countries score above the average on the Digital Government Index, this is on the right-hand side of the slide, there is still a lot of potential to improve digital policy frameworks, strengthen digital leadership, and use data more strategically. Stronger data governance and digital integration can help governments operate much more effectively. Regulatory practices will also be key. On average, the quality of regulatory impact assessment systems for primary laws across OECD countries has remained almost stable from 2014 to 2024. So much more can be done in that space. Another example is spending reviews, which have become a permanent feature in many OECD countries. You can see this on the left-hand side of the slide, but more needs to be done to clarify their objectives, decide on options to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending, and make real decisions based on their findings. When continuing to step up capacity, 3 priorities are emerging today. The first priority is restoring a sense of dignity in citizens' interactions with government. In 2023, only 30% of people on average believe that the political system in their country allows citizens like them to have a say in government actions. And 43% of respondents consider likely that governments would accept policies beneficial for corporations, even if harmful for society as a whole. This perceived lack of accountability could also be linked to perceived weaknesses in the integrity system. For example, OECD countries have adopted 77% of OECD criteria for regulations on conflict of interest, but they have only implemented 42% on average. There is thus significant opportunity to advance policies that promote better engagement of the public and accountability. We know through our work that today these are very big drivers of trust in our institutions. Dignity in interactions with public institutions also means services that meet people's needs. For example, to better align public administrative services with citizens' needs and expectations, many countries have adopted what is called a life event approach. This approach organizes public services around key events in citizens' life, such as the birth of a child, going on retirement, or losing a job, rather than around the internal structure of government. Among the countries which we have surveyed, 71% have implemented some form of a life event approach for certain public services, but much fewer countries have implemented a fully integrated approach, where services are bundled together and citizens interact with a single entry point throughout the life event. The second priority for stepping up capacity is advancing towards a greater sense of security, security being defined in the broad sense of the term. As the Secretary General mentioned earlier, for businesses and consumers, confidence in the legal system is crucial. They need to be assured that they will not be defrauded and that contracts will be fully enforceable. However, the average score across OECD countries for the World Justice Project's Quality of Civil Justice Index has remained largely unchanged since 2014, as you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. Governments also play a key role in ensuring economic security for households through income redistribution. On average, 27% of people in OECD countries live in relative poverty before taxes and transfers, such as child, housing, or unemployment benefits. However, this figure drops to 11% after such taxes and transfers are accounted for. This is a role that remains crucial for government to play despite the difficult fiscal situation. Finally, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, trust in public institutions is intimately linked to the confidence that citizens have in government's capacity to balance intergenerational interests. Ensuring a greater sense of security across generations is absolutely key today. The third priority is for governments to best support prosperity, and a key part of this is supporting productivity growth in the economy. There are several pathways for governments to help enhance productivity, the first one being, of course, effective regulation. We have already talked about regulation, and we know there is a need to simplify, much simplify for better impact. But there is also a need for better integrity in the system. While lobbying is a legitimate part of the decision-making process on regulation, only 42% of OECD lobbying criteria for accountability and transparency are fulfilled, with only 36% implemented. Governments could also be more effective in spending. The optimization of procurement, which represents on average 13% of GDP across OECD countries, is one of its important levers. It is essential to ensure that the efficiency of public procurement systems is actively monitored. Slightly more than 2/3 of OECD countries report using efficiency indicators as part of their procurement systems, and 60% of OECD countries use new technologies to improve procurement. Even more important for today and for the future is for governments to better leverage data as a strategic asset. open access to what we call high-value data sets. These are government-held data sets that are considered as particularly valuable for societal and economic benefits. These data can support innovative solutions across businesses, civil society, and the public sector, including AI systems, while improving also public resource efficiency. Currently, across OECD countries, an average of 47% of high-value data sets are available as open data. There is thus a significant room for improvement. In sectors such as education, health, and social welfare, the availability of this data is even lower, at 37% and 42%, respectively. As I mentioned, the focus chapter this year is on governing for the green transition, one of the 5 pillars of our Reinforcing Democracy initiative. Governing for the green transition falls right at the intersection of enhancing a sense of dignity, reinforcing a sense of security, and enhancing productivity. First, the credibility of the implementation of long-term policies to reduce emissions and minimize the degree of climate change can still be largely enhanced. Net zero targets have been widely adopted in legislation across OECD countries over the past decade, and 23 out of 37 OECD countries have enshrined net zero targets into law, while other 5 countries have proposed such legislation. Another way of helping to ensure long-term commitment and credibility is also by establishing independent authorities to provide oversight and review of climate policy. Just about half of OECD countries have established these independent authorities. In turn, obviously, governments also need to have the right capabilities or the skills and competencies to implement these long-term policies to reduce emissions. A significant majority of countries have adopted green public procurement policies or frameworks. However, the detailed measurement of environmental impacts, such as CO2 emissions saved, for example, remains limited in procurement policies. This underscores the need for enhanced monitoring and evaluation mechanism. There is also significant room for improvement in green infrastructure practices across OECD member countries, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide. Countries should utilize planning and policy frameworks to signal their commitment to investing in green infrastructure and specify the conditions necessary to deliver and operate infrastructure that meets green standards. Finally, as we all know, governing through the green transition will require the tools to build broad social acceptance of government's goals and implementation choices. Evidence suggests that climate policy issues are increasingly being debated and discussed in deliberative processes, such as citizen assemblies, for example. 41% of the deliberative processes recording in OECD countries between 21 and 23 focused on environmental issues. This is a big number. The question now is how to ensure that these processes are meaningful, how to broaden the use of a participatory process, which is another key pillar of our Reinforcing Democracy initiative. As you can see, this is a very rich publication that brings together a substantial body of comparative evidence on public governance and provides also clear priorities for the future. There is much, much more in this report, much more data. I just mentioned a few, and I encourage really all of you to download it and go through it in more details. Before I hand it back to Sapana, let me reiterate that navigating the complex challenges ahead will require very, very large governance efforts by government, with a focus on enhancing a sense of dignity in people's interactions with public institutions, enhancing their sense of security, and improving the effectiveness and efficiency of government, key factors for supporting productivity growth in the economy. Thank you very much for listening, and now I'll hand it back to you, Sapana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsa, for your excellent summary of the report. And I suppose my first reflection is it's quite humbling. There's a lot of work to do, but I think that it's also comforting to see that there's some best practice that we can learn from. But some of the challenges, we're all in it together. I was very struck by your graph that showed the different policy challenges that the public care about most, and seeing kind of rising prices and inflation at the top of that agenda is something that we're all going through at the moment. So really, really interesting to see. And also, I'm just struck, been looking through past editions, and it's pretty amazing to see how much this publication has come on since you started it in 2009. And we've made so much progress in how we measure public governance outcomes, also through the excellent work that's being done on the trust survey. And that's a really actionable set of data for us all to take forward in our countries, which also supports the new data that the Secretary General mentioned on delivering human-centred public services that supports our recently adopted recommendation. I also just wanted to sort of tease out that this is now in our hands. So the benefit of the publication, it's great that the OECD has put this together, but it's now all about implementation. And I really welcome this new chapter on prosperity, as I was saying, that we all are facing this big challenge in our countries, and to get some extra data and thought about that, and then layering it on to our budgeting and public finance data, I think will give us a really solid foundation for developing more sort of comprehensive measures for government efficiency and effectiveness. And that's something at the PGC we're really passionate about taking forward in this next phase. So as Elsa's already given us all the call to action, I really encourage you after this, please download the report, please tell your colleagues about it. It's a really great report with really easy visualizations, but I suppose it's now, the work is now in our hands. We need to take this forward and make change happen. And just before I move on to the panel discussion, first of all, just congratulations to Elsa and the team on the brilliant work. And then I just want to thank once again Secretary General Corman for joining us, for those really helpful anchoring thoughts to get us started. And with that, I'm going to move us to the panel discussion. So again, thank you to our speakers for joining, and we're really interested in sort of the application of this data in country locations. So your insight is very welcome. So I'm going to first of all start with Ambassador Varaaman. Finland has a trajectory as a country that overcomes crisis really successfully. We all have lots to learn from you. So the question that I have for you is, in this current context of limited fiscal resources and multiple complex transitions, what type of measures are needed to maintain resilience? And what role does high quality evidence play in this process? Over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Sapana. This is a very interesting and promising discussion, and obviously the publication as such is also really interesting for us. Now, I mean, all of us are. I was personally impressed by your observation that obviously this is for us who are keen to improve our public service performance, that this is a vital publication. And I mean, in Finland, we are facing the challenge of significant public finance pressure and consolidation needs. So it requires that we are able to make responsible and sustainable policy choices with regard to government expenditure today and for the years ahead. Now, I mean, a key to successfully being able to carry out reforms is the ability indeed to maintain public trust, as also touched upon by Elsa. And I mean, the trust survey, which forms an essential part of this report as well, shows a bit of a paradox with regard to Finland. I mean, even if we have had and still have relatively high levels of public trust in government in general, citizens do not, however, trust that they have significant possibilities to influence decisions. Now, the OECD studies also just outlined by Elsa show that if a person feels that he or she has a voice in the society, it's very important for the trust that we seek to maintain, also for resilience sake. Now, to improve the trust and citizen participation in Finland, we have sought to implement several OECD recommendations, one of which is about national dialogue. And we have been carrying out these dialogues in Finland in the last couple of years. We have reached more than 8,000 people in 14 different languages, even if we only speak Finnish and Swedish normally here 140 localities and participants age ranging between 5 and 90 years and involving around 390 organizers from different spheres of society. And these dialogues have been conducted in small groups and aim is to reach the most vulnerable groups in particular. The theme of this spring's debate, for instance, has been the issue of mental resilience and specifically how communities can enhance it. And the results of these dialogues will be vitally used in preparation of policy work, both in various ministries and at the level of civil service in general. In addition, our government is committed to reducing unnecessary norms. Part of this involves administrative simplification, streamlining bureaucratic processes, reducing fragmentation, and modernizing public administration in a way that not only lowers cost, but also improves delivery efficiency and responsiveness and reach of our actions. Simplified systems reduce barriers for citizens and businesses, strengthen service delivery and free up administrative capacity to manage these complex transitions that we are currently living in. And we certainly need governments that are adaptive and agile. Now, to answer that second question of yours, I would say that obviously all of us, we need high quality evidence to underpin all these efforts, and hence there's the importance of government at a glance as well. It's essential for assessing cost effectiveness of interventions, identifying administrative bottlenecks and the improvements needed, and supporting decisions that align short-term measures with long-term fiscal sustainability. Evidence ensures that limited resources are deployed where they are most needed and most effective, and provide the basis for transparency and accountability. And I would say that this publication allows also for very interesting benchmarking among us member states, as you pointed out yourself. In some, trust is the foundation of effective governance, as it fosters confidence in institutions and encourages citizens to participate and that their voices matter. That effective governance can be achieved via policymaking based on high quality evidence. Obviously, none of us can rest on our laurels, but we need to be reform oriented all the time and ready to challenge present day orthodoxy. And all of that can contribute to the resilience of any society. Finally, I think you might be aware Finland will be chairing the MCM, the Ministerial Conference of OECD next year. So I look forward to being able to make use of the government at a glance and the Gov Directorate in general in the preparatory works towards the MCM as well. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I really like the thought of thinking about the dialogues as a way of de-risking design and delivery, and the importance of that, not only to build trust, but to also the process being really critical in making sure that our outcomes are strengthened. So thank you, and we'll have time to come back to some of these themes. So now I'm going to turn to the Deputy Chief of Staff, Alonso. So Deputy Chief of Staff, you're at the heart of government activity in Spain, and part of your responsibilities include reflecting on lessons learned, ensuring that policies are adjusted accordingly, and that we're also anticipating and preparing for new challenges. So my question to you is, in the current multi-crisis context, what have you learned about public institutions' capacity to engage with and support citizens in ways that strengthen a sense of dignity in their interactions with institutions? And we've seen some challenging data about sort of trust in institutions. So thinking ahead to future risks, especially the climate crisis, where do governments need to improve to build the consensus and public trust required for meaningful and lasting reforms? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sapana, for the question. And also thank you very much to the OECD for the invitation. And once more, congratulations on this excellent work. I think Government at a Glance is a reference for all of us in terms of having the evidence, having the data, being able to compare what we do better, and especially what we can improve, learning from each other, which is at the core of the OECD spirit. So we were mentioning, of course, we're coming from, you were talking about the multi-crisis, no? And it seems that we are in this time, which is not only about the complexity that we already have, but it's also about the speeding up, no? And the coexistence of many crises at the same time, and many events that somehow put us to a test. In the last few years, we had to endure as governments. COVID, a strong economic crisis, climate emergencies, economic uncertainty, etc. And of course, all those underlying transformations that were already happening, the technological transformation and the climate threat that you were mentioning. Of course, this has put us to a test, and I would like to emphasize, you were talking about the dignity dimension. When you were talking about security and productivity, this is critical, and this speaks more to the what. But when we talk about dignity, this is a bit speaking more to the how. And I think that is where we learn a lot from all these situations that we have endured. We have deepened our understanding of how institutions must engage with citizens. We know that we have to engage, but we have learned a lot about how to do it in the most effective way. And of course, we learn by doing. We learn from our mistakes, and we also learn from each other, no, in terms of how other governments are facing these challenges. I think there are key elements there that they are evident to all of us. Key element is the accessibility. Reaching out to people, it's critical, and very often in many of our countries that also has an element of getting to the places where the government sometimes, or the message of the governments or the services of the governments don't reach. So that is where things like technology, who pose somehow, and sometimes they pose challenges, they also pose opportunities. And for us, for instance, through the Spain Digital 2025, we have spanned the access of government services to rural areas, and we are actually even deepening that outreach. There's elements of transparency, accountability that is critical. No, it's not only about reaching to the citizens; it's also giving citizens that sense that they own their governments, not only through elections every 4 years, but also that governments are accountable and are transparent, and that we are here to serve the citizens. So that's critical. But one key element that I think we have learned a lot, and I think probably many of my colleagues share, is that this kind of engagement, when we talk about citizen engagement with dignity, this is not only about communicating and informing. This is a bi-directional engagement with the citizens. So this is a lot about listening, and not only listening, but incorporating that feedback loop into your very own policies. So we are building models, no, that incorporate that, and of course, in a country like Spain, which is highly decentralized, that also implies deepening in the collaboration and the coordination between the different levels of government. No, so of course we always look at it from the central government, but of course, in terms of that outreach and that proximity to the citizen, as the government disengage all the different levels, including the regional and the local, of course. One major step that we have taken since September 2024 was the month where we launched our Democracy Action Plan. And this is a roadmap of 31 actions, measures to implement across the government over the next 3 years. And precisely this speaks to the interest in reinforcing democratic resilience, anchor in these elements of transparency and enhancing participation. These I'm not going to outline all the measures, of course, but basically this is built around 3 main pillars that, as a government, we consider to be very important. One is the quality of government information, and of course, this speaks a lot to what we have learned in terms of open government strategies. Spain has been very active in terms of not only incorporating, but also implementing what we consider to be an open government. We are elaborating our fifth open government plan, and as many of you probably know, this fall in October, we will be hosting the ninth Global Summit of the Open Government Partnership, because, as I was saying, this is about learning from each other. Beyond the executive, beyond the government itself, this is about enhancing the transparency of the legislative power and also citizens' trust in the electoral system. This is sometimes something that we forget when we consider ourselves to be well-established democracies and functioning countries, but it is critical, that we do what we can for that. And that brings me to the third pillar, which is about the ecosystem. This is about transparency, pluralism, and accountability in the broader ecosystem in which we as governments operate. And of course, this speaks to having a media that is transparent, that creates this this ecosystem in which our democracies can flourish, and that we fight aspects like misinformation, disinformation, and we have transparency about the ecosystem in which we operate. So basically, this is what we are doing. This is not about only having citizens that are duly informed. This is about having citizens that are actively engaged in what we do as government, and this is what we are promoting. One aspect I cannot refrain from mentioning that we as Spain also are particularly interested, and in our case is that we are participating in the OECD also from the center of government. Spain is now actively chairing the network of centers of government because we feel that this is an area in which we need to engage from if you allow me, from the very top, or at least from the very center, that those best practices that we can learn from other countries and that need to be shared throughout the different levels of government, they should start from the very center. And that is why, as the Prime Minister's office, we're fully engaged in this, and looking forward to do what we do at the OECD, which is to share best practices, identify them, and learn from each other.
Brilliant, thank you. There's just so much in what you've just said, especially after we saw on Elsa's chart the fact that sort of the public don't believe that we're going to listen to them, engage them. It feels like you're taking, you've got an action plan of 31 things to do, but that duality of what technology it could create risks, but it creates opportunities, the listening as well as communicating to the public. But I'm really struck by your multi-dimensional approach, both in the layers of government, but the whole ecosystem having to work together if we're going to crack this problem. So thank you so much. That was really interesting. So now I'm going to turn to Secretary Melo, who's just starting his day in Brasilia. So thank you for getting up early, but not only getting up early, but doing that on a public holiday for you. So I'm really grateful that you're joining us. My question to you is, Brazil is endowed with vast natural resources, yet faces the critical challenge of enhancing the prosperity of its people. What strategies and tools have you implemented to achieve the dual objectives of conserving natural resources while simultaneously improving material living conditions? And additionally, what are the key challenges that you've encountered and the lessons that you've learned along the way?
Thank you very much, Sapana. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, actually, I think the first thing we need to look when we talk about preservation and we talk about development in a sustainable way in Brazil is that the government needs to use the science evidence to face this challenge. There's no point in denying what we are seeing in the whole world, but especially in Brazil, especially regarding the climate crisis and its impacts. So I think the first thing you need to look is the institutions. We have in Brazil a lot of institutions that are very important to bring development to the regions that we have most challenges, like Amazonia and like in the south of Brazil. These institutions like ICMBio, IBAMA, they were disconstructed over time, and they were considered for quite some time Brazil like enemies of the development of these regions, because exactly they want to face the challenge of make the region develop at the same time preserving the biomes and preserving the forest. Uh, so I think the first thing we need to do, and we did here in Brazil, was to straighten these institutions of governance and control, and at the same time improve the quality and transparency of the data. So when you have good data and good institutions, not just bring this data to public, but also to use this data to make action plans, you can have good results. In terms of action plans, so with the data and the institutions, we built some action plans here in Brazil. The first one is what we call the ecological transformation plan. It's a plan that have 6 axes and hundreds of actions inside this axis. But the main focus is to build a path of development that is embedded within the idea of decarbonization and enhancing productivity in these new sectors linked to decarbonization. Because as many of you may know, Brazil have a lot of comparative advantages in terms of clean energy, biofuels, and biodiversity. So using this information and using this comparative advantages to enhance our productive sector is quite important. And this plan is focused on this, on finance instruments like the one we created with IDB and World Bank, called Eco Invest Brazil, which is a hedge for international investors to invest in ecological transformation in Brazil, and a lot of others like Fundo Amazonia, like the Climate Fund, and others financial instruments to deal with this plan. We have also the climate plan. The climate plan dialogues a lot with the ecological transformation plan, but it's aimed for us to reach our targets, our climate targets. And Brazil, as one of the first countries to set very transparent and bold targets. And we are working to reach these targets using the instruments we have, including the institutions I talked about. In the last 2 years, Brazil, the destruction of forests reduced by 50% in basically all biomes of Brazil. So using the data, making it public, making it stronger, using the institutions you have, strengthening these institutions, and having a clear action plan, it makes these numbers a very good result for what we aimed at the start of this government. Just to finish, I would say that we have other actions that are quite important for public perception, not only domestically, but internationally. Like, we are developing here our sustainable taxonomy, and we are doing this with the support of a lot of institutions, including some European institutions, German institutions, that already have a sustainable taxonomy themselves. And this will be very important for Brazil because we'll be able not only to channel investments to this new technologies and these new areas that demand a lot of investments, and they will have benefits from this taxonomy, but also to make earmarks on expenditures and tax expenditures. We have here in Brazil almost 8% of GDP on tax expenditures. We just created a new system of transparency on these tax expenditures. Brazil's one of the countries that have more transparency on this, but this new system is even better because the society needs to know where 80% of its GDP is going. And now we will be able to earmark these tax expenditures, showing which ones are sustainable and which ones are not. And this is being built with a lot of participation from public. We have a lot of civil society institutions participating on these discussions. So I believe that these are the main pillars behind what we're doing and how we need to face these challenges is with transparency, strong institutions, and of course, an action plan based on it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Secretary Mello. I sort of taking the graph that Elsa showed us earlier about sort of data sets being publicly available, and you just practically showing us what innovation and action can be driven by putting data out there was really powerful. So we're rapidly running out of time. So this is my quick fire round. I'm gonna come to each panelist, and unfortunately, you'll only have 60 seconds. I'd love you to give me either one reflection from the panel conversation or one thing that you hope the audience will take forward, having listened to this conversation or having engaged with Elsa's presentation. So given I've been really unfair and changed the how we're going to end this, Elsa, I'm going to come to you first with that.
Thank you very much. Well, listening to the different great speakers we have here, I was taking notes thinking we're basically looking at a moment where we know that we need strong institutions, but that are not trusted as much as we would like them to be, and that there's a very big need to make them more accountable, more engaging, but also more efficient and more productive. And for that we have digital and data. Which we need to leverage. I think that's what I'm taking from the speakers here. And it's been fascinating. Thank you very much. And if you allow me 15 seconds before closing for me, I would like to thank my team. This is a whole of department exercise. So I thank everybody in the department, but I also would like to thank specifically the team in charge of putting it all together. Santiago Gonzalez, Alexis Kiander, Alessandro Lupi, Connor Dastoil, and Anaïs Gafford, and of course, Monica Brezzi. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elsa. And yeah, again, to echo our thanks for everyone on the call, to the team for this brilliant work. It's going to help us take forward change in our countries. So next, I'm going to come to the Deputy Chief of Staff, Alonso, for your final remark.
Thank you. So rather than conclusions or anything, I mean, it was extraordinary to hear from others and all that, but I'm going to end up sort of opening up leaving an additional comment or reflection. Since Guillermo was talking about the climate, one additional challenge that I think we confront right now is that many of the, let's say, shared consensus that we had, and maybe they were not so broadly shared, but many of the things that we didn't need to maybe explain so detailed to our publics because they were more broadly shared by our populations now are increasingly questioned in our societies. And, you know, climate has always had detractors and, you know, people who might not be so supportive of sustainability, but now we are even rowing against a harder tide. And this brings me back to the topic, no, and to the issue, which is how we engage citizens, how we communicate to them. And my point here is that probably what we have to do as governments, this requires an additional effort, but also within that effort, we have to engage citizens in a way that they see the benefits in their daily lives, no? And I think many of our countries, I can think of the situation a few years back in France as well. No, we have had to confront, no, social crises derived from this. So if anything, we have to redouble that. And this is a bit of what we are also doing in Spain. No, we have presented the need for a climate transition as an opportunity to transform the economy of the country. Luckily, Guillermo was talking about the natural endeavors and endowments, of Brazil. Spain also has them with renewables, but we have to make sure that we explain to citizens that this is not a sort of a policy design from a technocratic government, but their lives are going to improve not only in the short, in the medium, and in the long term, no? Because this is part of the solution, and the solution is through this. So, if anything, I think we need to redouble our efforts, and this demands more from us governments in the current context.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to now come to Secretary Mello.
I believe I agree with everything that has been said, especially with the idea that we have to put people in the center. If people are not in the center, they will not feel engaged. So when we talk about development, it's not about only productivity, it's not about only new technologies, it's not about only sustainability. It's about getting the lives of the people better. And we need to make it sure that when we discuss these topics, including innovations, technological innovations, we need to show that even the technological innovations that may harm people's life in labor or everything, we have an action plan to use that in their benefit. And this is true with technological innovations and also with sustainability. If people think that we're putting climate over their lives, it will not work well in a liberal democracy, maybe in an authoritarian system, but we are not looking for that also. So I believe that's the main message. Everything we said is quite important. It will happen, like us or not, but we need to find ways to bring people to the center and make them feel a part of this process and make them feel their lives is getting better with it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And a plug to the OECD Trust Survey. One of the metrics is around the communication of reform, and that we're not doing great on that. And I think that, just to build on your point, we're not doing a great job of setting out our theory of change for public sector reform, and then how these individual activities add to that. So thank you very much. And finally, Ambassador Varranmah.
Thank you, Sapana. So my how you say 50 cents of the discussion today. I mean, I would say that read the publication. I mean, everybody who is online. I mean, there have been several hundred people attending. So it's a vast supply of eye-opening data. It's inspiring data for all of us, and I'm from my part, I'm very thankful for that publication having given us a lot of food for thought. Then I was listening to my colleagues from Brazil and Spain talk about the challenges in their governance structures. And I thought, I mean, open government, access to government, ability to take part and influence. So, I mean, the public governance challenges are not that different, across the globe. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to what we can learn from each other and the best practices, how to improve things, and I'm sure that debate will continue in the Public Governance Committee and under your leadership, Sapana. But that's sort of my take on today's launch. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to be very quick because the ambassador has done all the plugging for the PGC and for the publication that we need to do. But just a final well done to the OECD, but also for the delegates and experts from across all our countries that have been part of the Government at a Glance steering group who made the publication possible, because we all provided underlying data, and that's obviously critical. I think that this is a really great moment to celebrate the use of data and evidence-driven policy making, and I know it's something that we all believe in, so this is a great step forward. Also, we've already said download the publication, but I just want to say that also all the underlying data sets are available for download too. I think that there's lots of links in the chat, so please go forward and click on those. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you for the Secretary General for joining us. It's been a brilliant afternoon, and I hope that you find this publication really useful as you take forward your reform efforts. So thank you very much and good afternoon. Take care.